Memory, beyond the bonds of time, stretches from before creation to the end of eternity, like a bird who carries all we know and all we have forgotten from generation to generation. We are what we remember. We are what we choose to forget. That's an extract from a poem by Alden Solovey in a wonderful book called The Book of Words, talking about memory. Memory. Memory punctuates our lives. Memory punctuates our sacred calendar, our liturgy, our imaginations. Memory punctuates the journey of our lives, remembering and being remembered. These holidays are pregnant with memory. Some are so joyful and rich, others are deeply painful. And of course, we remember those we loved who are not by our sides, not at our tables, but always in our hearts. We just finished the Yizkor sermon, this Yizkor service. This is a Yizkor sermon. I've never given a Yizkor sermon before, but this is a Yizkor sermon. Just warning you. We just finished the Yizkor service, which comes every Yom Kippur, as well as on the last day of Pesach, Passover, the second day of Shavuot. Most of you aren't there on the second day of Shavuot, I've noticed. Sorry. And on Shmini Atzeret at the end of Sukkot. And this year, Shmini Atzeret, which is Simchat Torah in Israel, will be the first anniversary on the Hebrew calendar of October the 7th, which we commemorated here last Monday. And the Yizkor that day is going to be very poignant. The verb root, Zayin Chaf Reish, Zachor, Zecher, which of course Yizkor comes from, appears in various forms in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible, 169 times. God remembering the covenant, remembering us remembering God and God's actions, remembering the exodus from Egypt, from slavery, the revelation at Mount Sinai, remembering the vicious attack from behind of our archenemy Amalek. Zachor lo tishkach. Remember, don't forget, says the Torah. Remembering the sin of the golden calf. Remembering the words spoken by Moses' sisters Miriam and its punishment. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadsho. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. All of these are such powerful narratives that depend on memory to sustain Jewish life through the generations. The Israeli historian, scholar Yosef Chaim Yerushalmi, in his book Zachor, Jewish History and Jewish Memory, really claims that Jewish history is about collective memory. In the postscript to the book, he says, "My terror of forgetting is greater than my terror of having too much to remember. Let the accumulated facts about the past continue to multiply," he says, "so that those who need can find that this person did live, those events really did take place. This interpretation is not the only one." And earlier in the book, he says, memory is not only the key to identity, it is also the guarantor of continued survival of the community. For the Jew, he says, collective memory is crucial, for it serves as the chain that links generation to generation. L'dor v'dor, the chain that connects generation to generation. So many of the prayers throughout our Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur liturgy, especially the Slichot section, the section of prayers for forgiveness, they are pleas that God remembers the past and promises, the past promises that were made so that we can be held in compassion in the present and in the future. Over and over again we say, Zechor lanu hayom brit 13. Remember for us today the promise, the covenant of your 13 attributes of compassion and mercy. And throughout these days, we say, Zochreinu l'chaim. Remember us for life. Remember us for life. I've had so many conversations over the years with people about how important the memories of the previous generations are, and how the ways in which they practice and express their Jewishness through ritual and through story and pass them on to the next generations. So crucial. And some of the people I've spoken to actually have expressed deep sadness for the fact that those memories have not been kept alive and the rituals have no longer been kept alive. At Yizkor, or on a yard site where we mark the anniversary of someone's death, we often say, as I said many times, Zichrono, or Zichrona, or Zichronam, may their or his or her memory be for a blessing. But what do we really mean when we say that? Especially if the memories that we have are not so blessed. What do we mean when we say Zichrono, Zichronam, Livracha, may their memories be for a blessing? At its core, when we say that, it's expressing the hope that we keep those memories alive through the values and qualities of that person, through telling stories or maintaining some of their traditions. We've developed a custom at Bonei Shalom of inviting people who have been called up to the Torah in honor of the memory of a loved one, to share something, a story, a memory about that person that they're remembering. And it's become such a sacred and moving and profound part of our services as we hear these stories that people share, and we get a sense of who this person was. And in some cases, they're people who died decades ago, but they're kept alive. John Polin, the father of Hirsch Goldberg Polin, one of the hostages from the Nova Music Festival, who was murdered by Hamas in a tunnel just a few weeks ago. John Polin said in his eulogy for Hirsch, Yehi zichrono mapecha. May his memory be a revolution. Mapecha. Lahafech. Something that turns us around. And since then, John and Rachel Hirsch Polin have been questioned about what he meant when he said that. And he said, we didn't mean to take to the street with pitchforks and go into a violent protest. That's not the kind of revolution that Hirsch would want, and it's not what we want, he said. Rather, It is a revolution where we really attempt to understand each other better, whoever and wherever the other is. He continued to say that Hirsch would always ask questions of people with whom he disagreed and listen to them with humility. Rachel, Hirsch's mum, added, it's a much quieter idea, not a political revolution, rather a moral and emotional, how we relate to each other, because Hirsch had dignity and Hirsch had humility. Yehi zichrono mapecha. May his memory be a revolution. In a public bomb shelter near Re'im, where the Nova Festival was, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland's friend, an unarmed and off-duty soldier, Staff Sergeant Aner Eliakim Shapiro, tossed back 7 of the grenades that were thrown in there by Hamas terrorists and saved in that process at least 7 lives of those who were hiding in that shelter, including Hirsch's. The 8th grenade killed him. Anna Shapiro, according to a piece I read about him, perfectly encapsulates G.K. Chesterton's maxim, the true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. He gave his life to protect and save his friends. Yehi zichrono mapecha, yehi zichrono livracha. May his life be for a blessing. May his life, his memory, be for a revolution. Elchanan Meir Clemenson, upon hearing about the fighting in the south, Elchanan, along with his brother Menachem and his nephew Itiael, immediately left on their own and headed for Kibbutz Be'eri. Finding an abandoned armored car, they made trips back and forth into the kibbutz, where terrorists were going house to house, and Elchanan personally rescued approximately 100 kibbutz members that day. Elchanan entered a home where a terrorist was waiting and he was shot dead. He died as a hero, and his memory should be a blessing. It should be a mapecha, a revolution. We remember Amit Man, the heroic woman paramedic who stayed behind in Kibbutz Be'eri while rockets rained down in order to save lives. The woman with the voice of an angel who sang a duet posthumously with one of Israel's biggest rock bands, HaYehudim, on a video screen at the back of an enormous stage in Tel Aviv at the alternative commemoration on October 7th. Known to her family as Amitush, her sister Chaviva remembers her from her last text message that day. I don't think I'll make it out of here. I love you. Yehi zichronah mapecha uvracha. May her memory be a blessing and a revolution. We also honor the memory of the Palestinian Israeli Arab paramedic, 23-year-old Awa Dawashe, who was a close relative of the Arab Israeli activist Mohammed Dawashe, who I've had the honor of having dinner with in Jerusalem just in November. Awad was working as a paramedic at the Nova Festival, and he insisted on staying at the scene to try to save lives. In the end, he gave his own. May his memory be a blessing. Yehi zichrono mapecha. May his memory be a revolution. We remember Shani Luke, the 22-year-old German-Israeli tattoo artist, one of 364 people who were killed at the Nova Festival. We remember Vivian Silver, the 75-year-old Canadian lifelong peace activist who worked her whole life to create change throughout the region, working closely with Palestinians every day of her life. And she was one of the 102 people who were killed on Kibbutz Be'eri. We're remembering all of those whose lives were cruelly taken from Nachal Oz, from Kfar Aza, from Nir Oz, from Yad Mordechai, from Ofakim, from Sderot, and so many others, each of those people with a name, a family, a story. We remember too the 728 soldiers killed on or since October 7th, each with a name, family, story. Zichronam livracha, Zichronam mapecha. May their memories be for a blessing. May their memories be for a revolution. We remember Jews and Christians and Muslims and Arabs and Palestinians and citizens of over 30 countries who lost their lives that day, and so many who've lost their lives since. How can we transform their memories into blessings? How can we transform their memories into revolutions of the Spirit? We can also remember some of the people who are still living, like Rami Davidan, a 59-year-old soft-spoken father of 4 and a fuel distributor by trade. On October 7th, he used his knowledge of the local terrain to rescue 700 people who were hiding from Hamas after they'd attacked the Nova Music Festival. Rami drove repeatedly into life-threatening situations, dodging Hamas bullets to locate and bring back to his home shocked revelers who were hiding in ditches and behind and up trees, terrified that the gunmen would find them. When there was nobody left to save, Rami used the cover of smoke from gunfire to access the site where the Nova Festival had been, and where over 360 people have been killed, sometimes in very barbaric and horrific circumstances. And Rami, when there was no one left to save, he went back in and he quietly gathered and tried to match the body parts. He covered up all the corpses that lay sometimes in very indecent positions. He moved the bodies away from the passage of the Israeli tanks that were starting to come in. And he said, Shema Yisrael, over every single one of those bodies. Unbelievable story of heroism. May his heroism, his deeds, his memory, not his memory, he's still alive, his story, be a mapecha, be a revolution, be a blessing. Some of our memories are so deeply rooted into the particularity of the Jewish people and our history. And much of Yom Kippur is that. Well, when we come later on to Eile Eskara, these I recall. It is profoundly particularistic about the blood-stained Jewish history over 2,000, 5,000 years. But some of our memories have to be universal. We have to, in my view, acknowledge the enormous suffering and loss of life of innocents, including Palestinians and Lebanese. Each of them, too, had a name and a family and a story. And may their memories, too, be for a blessing and be for a mapecha, for a revolution. So as we move momentarily into our Musaf service, which is full of ancient memory, the Avodah service, the reenactment of the temple service that we're going to do, the Eile Eskara that I just mentioned, the martyrology service that remembers the agonizing pain of Jewish history and from now on will always include memories of October 7th. As we move through Mincha and Ne'ilah, as we deepen our practice of self-reflection as the fast day goes along on its course, as we go deeper into our inner world, we remember, we recall, and we process the past so that we can be the best version of ourselves in the present and in the future. The ancient rituals and prayers of this holiest of days are fused with stories and memories that have shaped our childhood, that have become part of us. Stories of our ancestors, stories of our own families, and our collective shared memories. May each of those memories continue to inspire us, to enrich us, to guide us. And may they be livracha and lemapecha. May they be for a blessing, and may they be for a revolution. Shana Tova.